Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today, as you may or may not know, is the anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic, and I am kind of obsessed with the Titanic. Like, I'm completely enthralled with the history of the Titanic, with the stories of the passengers, with just like, you know, all kinds of accounts of it. And so I get really excited when I see works of fiction that have to do with the Titanic. So when I saw that this book was coming out this month, I got really excited about checking it out, and I ended up getting to read it on NetGalley and was so impressed with it. It was just one of those books that I thought I might like, but it wasn't how I thought it was going to be, and I still loved it probably more than I would have if it had been what I had expected. Vague, I know. But let me get into some of the reasons why I really enjoy this book, and then at the end I'm going to show you some of the Titanic themed things that I own, because I thought that this would be a good place for that, because yeah, I own a lot of random things that have to do with the Titanic. So The Midnight Watch is a Titanic book, so if you are a fan of all things Titanic, you would probably be interested in this. I will say that if you are looking for something that's more like the movie, this probably isn't going to fit that bill, because there is no romance in it. It doesn't really get into the grandeur that is the Titanic or was the Titanic. This is actually the story, a fictional account of the Californian, the night of the tragedy. So if you aren't familiar with the Californian and its part in the Titanic saga, it was actually a ship that was potentially close enough to the Titanic when it sunk to have saved everybody on board, but it didn't go to their rescue, and that was for a number of reasons. Again, if you're familiar with it, you'll know the kind of details and how it influenced laws as far as passenger travel go now, but it's also the ship that survivors said they could see in the distance. And so this is a fictional account of what could have gone on board the Californian, and it's really interesting when you get that perspective. And then on top of that, it's sort of, it doesn't read like nonfiction, it definitely reads like fiction, but if you're a nonfiction reader, you will probably find this appealing, because one of the main things this book has going for it is that David Dyer is a big researcher of Titanic history and is super knowledgeable about the Titanic. He actually went on the 100-year anniversary cruise that cruised the path the Titanic took, and was at the site where the ship sank the night that it sank 100 years to the day. Which, crazy, and I would have loved to have gone on something like that, but he is super into the history and the facts, and so this is definitely a really well-researched book. And he says in the back, when you read kind of like, I can't remember what it's called, like the, I don't know. When you read the stuff in the back, it talks about how he used actual transcripts from the court hearings, and all the research that he did to make sure that the details of this were as accurate as they could be. Obviously it's fiction, so he takes some liberties, but for the most part, this is something that could really give you information if you were looking for information about the Californian and its part in the saga. Now, the way this book is told is very interesting, because it is from several perspectives, and the main perspective that sort of holds the whole story together is that of an investigative journalist, and he is basically writing a story about the Californian. So he is kind of the body man at his paper, and they want him to write on tragedies and things like that, and so he's put on the story of the Titanic. And instead of going with the, you know, regular story about the survivors and their stories and trying to find out what happened on board the Titanic, he wants to know what happened on board the Californian and why it didn't go to the rescue of the Titanic. And so it's this fascinating picture not only of the Californian, but of investigative journalism. And so if you are at all interested in journalism or investigative journalism, for sure, this is a great picture of kind of the lengths that reporters mostly used to, because we don't have investigative journalists like we used to, not nearly as widely, but the lengths that he went to get this story and to find out the details and to really understand what might have happened, which is fascinating. And so that's what the probably 75% of the book is. The last portion of the book is basically the story that he wrote. It's called 8 White Rockets, and it's basically a story where he tells it from the perspective of the Californian, and he tells it from the perspective of a third-class passenger on the Titanic and her family. And that part was really moving. It captured something else in the story that really got to you, and I just thought that it was well written, and it also tied the whole story together, because we're sort of leading up to this point, and then it's like we tell the whole story again from the beginning, but in a cohesive way that really kind of outlines things. And I just thought it was really well done, and that was a great way to sort of tie everything up and to end the story. And the third-class passenger's perspective is pretty fantastic too. It's definitely a little bit heartbreaking. So I just really loved this book. I thought that it was really smart and well written. There were literary references in here to Moby Dick that were really beautifully tied in, and it just felt like, it felt a little like nonfiction, so it, you know, it got at that part of me that just really loves the actual real life story of the Titanic and everything surrounding it, but it was fiction, and it read like fiction, and that was something that I thought, that balance was wonderful, and I just can't say how much more impressed I was with this book than I even thought I would be. So, if you are interested in the Titanic, this is definitely a book I would advise you to check out. Even if you're not, I mean, again, if you like things that are investigative journalism, if you're a nonfiction reader, I still think this is something that you would get a lot out of and really enjoy, because it is really well written and really just a smart book. So yes, props to David Dyer, huge fan of this book, and I hope that you will check it out if it interests you. Now let's look at the crazy things that are Titanic themed that I have. I'll start with the most absurd one first, and probably one of my favorites. I'll take the case off it and do close-ups, but this is basically a metal replica of the Titanic, and my husband actually put this together for me. I found it at Barnes & Noble, and I was like, I have to have that. That's amazing. And then he went in and cut pieces of glass and used some kind of glue or something to make it look like it was moving through an ice field, and it's amazing, and it sits on my bookcase in the living room, and I just love it. It's probably my favorite thing that I have. So then the other things are all sort of related, and this one right here is the first one. It is a Titanic replica teacup. These are all pieces of china, and they are all from the collection that would have been the first class, like the veranda bistro kind of thing. I think that's the dishes it's from, but I just think they're beautiful. So I have the cup, or the teacup and saucer, I have the plate, and I have a bowl, and then I have two more pieces. One is a heart-shaped dish, and the other one is a heart-shaped box that all match, and I just love them. I just have a Titanic obsession, and it's real, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed hearing a little bit about this book, and also seeing the craziness that is my Titanic love. And if you guys have any questions about the book, about this stuff, I would love to talk in the comments, and I'm sure there are other Titanic obsessed people out there, so yes, thumbs up if you are a Titanic obsessed person like myself. Alright, well anyways, long video to a close. I will see you guys next time, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Bye!